All right. I am so excited to have Frank on the podcast today, Coach Frank Rich. He and I met a couple years ago now, just via Instagram. And I don't even remember. Did you reach out to me first? And we just kind of connected because we do the same thing, just on opposite ends of this business. And I am so excited to have you on the podcast to share your story. Go ahead, if you don't mind, and introduce yourself for my ladies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, no, thank you, Jolene. And yeah, it was me that reached out to you. I don't know if I saw you. I think I saw a video on YouTube. I think you were running some YouTube stuff back then. And, here's comes this video that says the porn addict's wife. And, I was a couple years into running Rebuild Recovery and helping men. I said, oh my God, here's a resource for the wives and the girlfriends of the men that I'm coaching. And yeah, we hit it off right out of the gate. And, I didn't really know a lot about your background story the first time I brought you on to my podcast, but I think there's just so much similarities in our philosophies and our worldviews, in the way that we see recovery, and the way that we see it impacting both men and women. And I really enjoyed that first conversation. I brought you back on about a year ago, and a few weeks back, I had you come and speak to the men. So yeah, real honored and grateful here today to serve in whatever capacity that I can. So yeah, little background on me. Coach Frank Rich has kind of become the name that I like to go by. I'm the CEO and founder of Rebuild Recovery, host of two podcasts now. The Superman Life, which is a long form interview-based show that I've been running since July of 2019. And then I also host the Rebuilt Man, which is our almost daily. So we do 3 episodes a week, very tactical. These are for our men that are struggling. So, 10 to 12 minutes, usually one nugget, one tip, one takeaway, one action item, that if you're struggling, most times in the realm of pornography addiction, but I think the things that we talk about transcend just pornography addiction. And,
Right.
and I try to really speak at it from a higher level, that if you're struggling with anything in your life, I think that there's common patterns to both the struggle, but then also common patterns to the pathway out of it. So, longtime entrepreneur, spent, a good decade in bodybuilding. And I think a lot of what I've learned in both of those areas have enabled me to step into this space with a unique view. I also have a background in kind of corporate leadership training and sales management. So my entire life, and that's why I kind of like to say, if I have any gift in the world, I think it's coaching
Hmm.
and transformational change, because it's really what I've spent the last 2 decades doing. So yeah, hopefully that kind of gives a good context on me and a little backstory.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I think that is one of the coolest things is that we resonated so much with each other and our philosophies. I love every time I follow you, I've seen all your clips, right? And every time we talk, we have so like our ideas about recovery are so similar and we understand this space so well and have such a similar view that obviously I resonate, right? So I'm always like, yes, everybody, all the men who are struggling, Coach Frank is your person. Okay.
Hmm.
But what I was hoping you would share today on the podcast is a little bit of your personal transformation, where you started, right? Because you started with a pornography problem and now you're here as a coach helping men. And I was hoping you'd give my ladies a little bit of kind of let's go through your story
Yeah.
because it's so helpful for them to see that there is hope, right? So much of what we see in this industry and in all of the recovery groups is like, well, you're just always going to struggle with this and you can't ever get past it and just live with it. Your husband's always going to deal with
Yeah.
this. And my husband will come on and talk about how he's past it, but it's so helpful for them to hear somebody else's story and maybe even some tips of or an idea of what their husband is going through
Hmm.
because they know what they're going through.
Yeah.
But sometimes the pain of what they're going through can be a little bit of a screen between them and their spouse or their partner. So it makes it harder to understand his side of the story. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if you don't mind, let's go way back.
Hmm.
When did you first start, or when were you first introduced to pornography?
Yeah, and real quick before I dive into that,
Yeah.
I can't get really long-winded in some of my storytelling, so feel free to interject at any point
Okay.
and bring me back on track here. But I think one of the things that I appreciated about our first conversation, that I think really drew me into you, was when we talked about the role of a woman in her
Mhm.
growth through this. You know, I had spoken with at that point, you know, dozens of women, you know, through various parts of this journey, you know, some that were just kind of sitting outside for more advocacy approaches. Others, you know, I had obviously an impact in my relationship. And I always knew that there was an opportunity for a woman to heal and grow through this journey. And I had a lot of women push back. And I think that's what I admire about you the most is you're not here shaming or victimizing anybody, but you're saying, hey, if you're in a relationship, there's two people that
Right.
are here. If the guy is working on his growth, and that's really how I see addiction recovery. I see it as very targeted and intentional personal growth or self-development.
Right.
And if one person in a relationship has that approach, they're growth minded, and the other doesn't, in time, those two are going to fall apart. And that's
Yes.
really what I appreciate about what you do is here is you're obviously helping heal the heart, right? But you're also saying, okay, ladies, like there's some areas in you uh, that we can improve upon. And nobody's here
Yes.
to shame you on that. I think every human being has areas that they can improve upon. So I just wanted to share that with you and hopefully the audience is as well. But yeah, to kind of, kick the story off here is, I'm 40, for a little bit of context, because I think that's important when I talk about when I first saw pornography. It was around the age of 6.
Oh,
I
man.
kind of remember it pretty vividly. Being a nosy little boy, most young boys look up to their father, and it's like, what's
Hmm.
going on in Dad's room? And I don't know if I was alone at the time or I was in Dad's room,
Hmm.
and just kind of scrounging through a sock drawer. I remember kind of removing some things and seeing in the bottom of the sock drawer, very hardcore magazine. This wasn't even like a Playboy. Playboy back in the day was porn, but it was articles and sports and
Hmm.
lifestyle and cars and fashion and all these other things. It wasn't this graphic material.
Uh-huh.
For me, it was like a Hustler-esque type of magazine. So very hardcore. And it shook me, and I can remember a couple things kind of occurring right in that moment. Obviously, there was a sense of curiosity in me,
Hmm.
like, what am I looking at? First of
Right.
all, right? Like, my body doesn't look anything like that.
Right.
Um, but it was also like it made me feel a certain type of way.
Sure.
And that, on a young boy's mind, I'm sure the research, early age exposure, obviously does correlate oftentimes to addiction later on in life. I was fortunate though for me, I believe that I did grow up in the 90s. Like I
Hmm.
wasn't one of these 6, 7,
Right.
8-year old boys that had the internet.
Right.
I had to wait till the parents went to sleep and try to catch something on the fuzzy screen on Cinemax, or
Yes.
Sunday morning paper would come and I would quickly grab the Sears or JC Penney's catalog and hoping to find something inside of a
Mm.
lingerie
Uh-huh.
magazine. I told a lot of stories about being a young boy growing up outside. Back in the 90s, we did go outside and
Yes,
play.
we did go outside back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah. So we spent a lot of time outside, and we would find the woods, and we would build forts and stuff like that. And I don't know if it was a homeless guy in and around our town or whoever, but he would always leave magazines at one of our forts. You kind of pass it around your
Mm.
friend, and then you kind of get into a little bit degenerate part of your life which once again, back in the 90s, you could walk into a convenience store. Some of them would have them behind the counter.
Right.
Other ones, they would just kind of be stored away on the corner.
Hmm.
They'd have this black film over there, like, duh, okay, we know obviously what's
What
behind
that
it.
is.
So
Yes.
yeah, one of us would kind of distract, the
Yes.
associate over here, while the other one was kind of slipping it into his backpack. Um, so, I think that those are kind of some early, I'm making light of it here, right? Obviously, but I think those are early signs of some addictive type of behavior because you're willing to do whatever it takes to get your drug,
Sure.
right? For me, I then once again remember getting the internet around 14, 15 years old. This was the dial-up days, right?
Yes.
If somebody picked up the phone while you're on it, it was like, like
Mm.
it kind of
Yes.
kicks you off. Uh, but honestly, Jolene, probably within the first couple of hours of having the internet, I'm like, where can I find some of these pictures that were on the magazine?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be slow. It'd take 40 minutes to download an image, but that was where I was at in my life. I didn't have anybody really speaking to me. Like I said, I found my dad's stash. So clearly
Right.
he was a porn user himself. And I didn't see anything wrong with it,
Hmm.
back then. Like this was, I think we looked at it as an initiation, for
Yes.
ourselves. Me and my friends, we would
Yes.
joke about certain type of things, you know. So if we kind of, continue through my journey, my early 20s, I talked about some of the sales and leadership work that I had done. I was very, very fortunate to land a position inside a large wireless company. We were, you may remember back in the day inside the malls, there were these kiosks that were kind of like really aggressive when
Yes.
you walked by. More than likely, that was probably one of our locations. We had close to 500 locations across the country, and we were young and we were very aggressive, and it was some of the
Mhm.
best training that I got back in the day. But quickly, I found some success in that company, and I, got promoted to a regional-based sales trainer, which
Mhm.
spent a lot of time on the road. The company shipped me from
Yes.
Tampa to Fort Myers. I was making a lot of money. And I became an early adopter of a BlackBerry, which for the young audience out there, BlackBerry was kind of the original iPhone. And
Yes.
I can see in my journey when that was the point when the addiction became a real big issue.
Hmm.
Because now, I had access to pornography 24 hours a day on a color screen BlackBerry
Right.
inside of my pocket. So, I would travel from store to store, location to location. I didn't have anybody overlooking what I was doing. I'd check in on location. I'd say, hey guys, everything looks great here. And I'd kind of wander off throughout the mall, find a big department store, Sears, J.C. Penney's, Nordstrom, Dillard's,
Hmm.
whatever it was. They all had these kind of big private restrooms. And, I would take pornography type breaks, like somebody that would smoke cigarettes would go
Yes.
relieve themselves outside. I was relieving myself in a public restroom
Uh-huh.
looking at porn. Once again, I didn't identify it as an addiction. I
Hmm.
probably was aware that it was odd that I was doing some of these things, but I'd assumed that there was obviously other people. My roommate,
Yeah.
he'd have porn on his computer. I had porn on my computer. I can remember kind of seeing some of these things. Um, Now through this, I obviously was struggling with a lot of insecurities, doubt,
Yeah.
anxiety. I grew up somewhat overweight. That's what kind of led me to bodybuilding in my late teenage years.
Hmm.
And I also saw a lot of men in my life struggle with a lot of addictions. Alcoholism runs through my family, mental health issues run through my family, drug addiction runs through my family. Suicide. I've had 3 generations of men that have taken their life. So for me, because nobody was willing to kind of speak into me, it was kind of this was just I saw this as an identity, right? Like we are a family that is not like the perfect model. Like we're not going to have the white picket fence. Like we weren't the church family. Like we're
Yeah.
going to struggle our way through life. So I think some of the success I was having in my career masked the real issues. I'm like, okay, I'm always going to have these problems because every guy in my life has them, but I've broken through financially. So I
Sure.
wasn't really addressing it. I was running to some other things. You give a young kid that's got some issues, you know, large sums of money, and it's drinking now kind of makes its way
Right.
into the picture. Partying, clubbing, drugs. I did have, some struggles with drugs early in my 20s. So that was, that was really my life in my early 20s was work, training hard, bodybuilding, but kind of always looking for these escape outlets, whether it was
Uh-huh.
pornography, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever it was. And I always felt like empty inside. But I
Yes.
said, you know what? At least I'm successful, right? At least I've
Mhm.
broken through, which nobody else in my life had done up to that point in my family, at least. So I was like, okay, I'll struggle with this, but at least I'm winning over here. Once I
Mhm.
got into my late 20s, I got into some long-term committed relationships with some amazing women, and that's when it really became an issue, right?
Mhm.
As I was now hiding things from people that I cared about. They were very one woman in particular was very clear that it was something that she didn't like. Even me looking at like bikini type photos, like she would,
Uh-huh.
and she became the type that became very aggressive in looking at the things that I was doing. Like, she looked at my
Mm.
phone records, she looked at my laptop, and that caused a lot of fights and arguments. So quickly, I learned how to hide things
Yes.
from people. Once again,
Uh-huh.
pointing to kind of the addictive type of nature. Some
Okay, I'm totally interrupting you right now because
oh,
this
just
is
do.
so fascinating. And so many of my women struggle with this part, right? They might become very aggressive, we call it like addicted to the addiction, right? They
Mm,
want to know what he's doing. And I think this comes generally from what I see is from a distrust,
yeah,
right? Is from a distrust is even if he says, yeah, I'm still struggling with it, they may not, even if he's honest about that, even if he's saying, yeah, I'm still watching it, they may not trust when he's watching it, how often he's watching it, that he's only watching what he says he's watching, right? And so even if they know that he's still viewing it, they still want to see if they can kind of make themselves feel better by gaining more information, which is what we think in our brains, right? We think, okay, I don't understand this. I don't feel good about it. If I just knew more about it, then I'd feel better. It must just be because I don't have enough information. If I was able to know exactly what he was looking at, then I'd feel better about myself. And so I totally understand this from the woman's perspective. So it's so interesting to hear this from your perspective because I never did this with my husband. I was thinking about this the other day. This is a total tangent. Is that I did not struggle trusting my husband when he came and told me he had a pornography problem. I wasn't like, prove it.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, I never to this day, I have zero proof besides my husband's word that he had a pornography problem. I never looked at his computer. I never
Mhm.
looked at his phone. I just took him at his word. And yet, the opposite, when he comes and tells me, hey, I don't have a pornography problem. I'm not looking at this. I am not even tempted, right? There's so much of me, right, that for a long time, which is why I had to work through it, wanted to doubt him, wanted to be like, well, prove it, right? It's so fascinating that it just goes to show that it's your own insecurities, right? That are leading you
Yeah.
to whether or not you trust what he's saying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I don't have a relationship with this woman anymore. You know, we're still connected on Facebook. It's amazing to see what she's gone on and the mother and the woman that she has become. And doubt she'll ever hear this, but if she does, very very happy, and I'm glad you got what I wasn't able to provide to you. But she did have a lot of insecurities.
Yeah.
We both were in the fitness industry at the time. I was, at that point, I'd left the wireless industry. I was working in a gym, a large gym,
Hmm.
locally. Like I was, somewhat well known, kind of, across kind of the social circle, both in the gym space and then also kind of like I was still partying quite a bit. So a lot of people knew me. A lot of people wanted to be around me at that time.
Yeah.
This would be the woman that if she saw me, she was on the treadmill in the back of the gym. She saw me talking to a woman. She would get off the treadmill, beeline across the gym, and interrupt what was
Mm-hmm.
going on. That was a level of kind of some of her insecurities.
Yes.
And then obviously that manifested in the looking at my history,
A
right?
hundred percent.
But at the same time, like I wasn't really being truthful in who I was.
Sure.
I talk about why some of the relationships in my past didn't work out. It was because I was playing a character to the best of my ability, right? And
Yes.
when you're not being your true authentic self, like you can't operate from that place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah, I would be really good at presenting myself, in kind of the first, second, third impressions with people. But then when you move in with somebody, like that mask is going to come
Right.
off
Yes.
eventually. When the mask comes off, you see who the person really is. So, that led to a lot of fights and arguments, because there was so much inconsistency in how I was showing up. So I don't blame her. I've taken full responsibility for everything that's happened in my life. But yeah, there definitely was some deep rooted insecurities
For sure.
within her that was leading to some of that.
Yeah. So tell me then what happened next. One time you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think on the last call you said you were asking me about when I found out about my husband, when he told me like if that turned into an argument or a fight, and you were saying that did you break your laptop?
I did. Yeah.
Tell me this
Yeah.
story. I want to hear this story.
Yeah, yeah. So there was 10 years where I didn't address it. From 25 to 34. Like I was competing in bodybuilding. I was winning awards there. I was never the best in the world, but I took my body as far as I felt I could go at that time. I left the gym space. I got into corporate recruiting. Had some success in that part of my career. By 30, I was into entrepreneurship. So I think sometimes when people think about, men that are struggling, and obviously the women here probably don't, but I think a big label, in the space is like these guys are just guys that kind of living at home and they're, sleeping in mom's basement. And,
Yes.
you know, my experience has been the complete opposite. Like
Right.
80% of our guys are crushing in a lot of
Very
areas
successful.
of
Yes.
life. And I think because that happens, like you don't really address the issue that's going on in your life. So I
Right.
just I just tucked it away and I said, you know what, like if I do have a problem with porn, I'll just deal with it for the rest of my life because it's not holding me back in any
Right.
area of my life. I wasn't connecting the dots with how it was damaging my heart, how it was leading to some of the insecurities and some of the anxiety and some of just the other things that I felt empty inside. I'm like, I just need more. I just need to go win
Yes.
more. And that'll fill this hole. In reality, I love the quote from G.K. Chesterton, late 1800s Christian philosopher, that when a man knocks on a brothel door, he's knocking for God.
Mm.
in reality, I think most vices, most material things that we run to as men is filling that empty space inside of our heart that only God can fill.
A
So,
hundred
you
percent.
know,
I think totally cutting you off again. I
yeah,
think women do the same thing. We just have different outlets.
exactly.
A hundred
Shopping,
percent. It's like whether we how we look physically, whether we and you might take that in different areas. For women who aren't working, they might take that as like being the whatever they think the perfect mom is. It's like, okay, if
mhm.
I throw the Pinterest birthday party, then that will make me feel all this self-worth. I think it's all just a quest to fill ourselves from the outside in rather
Yeah,
than from the inside out.
absolutely. Yeah. So, I think the story to recovery really started in the summer of 2017. So by that point, I was starting my second business. It was an online training and fitness company, and I joined a mastermind after having a one-on-one coach, and I flew up to an event in Toronto, which was my first time really being exposed to kind of like the mastermind and
Mm-hmm.
coaching and networking space. And the gentleman that was running the event, his father was a pastor. And second day of the event, he had his pastor or his father come up and speak to us, and it kind of opened my eyes to a couple things. For one, here's a man that's in his mid to late 30s, very successful, and just expressing just absolute love and honoring his father in a way that I'd never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about kind of my upbringing, like the men that I saw like struggled, disconnected from their children,
Right.
providing, right? Like I love my
Yes.
father. He always provided. I always had everything that I needed, but there wasn't that deep emotional connection. And I think that also was probably some of the things that I was running to try to find in my life was like, maybe I can find a guy, financially that's successful. That
Yes.
kind of lead me. But I saw that and I witnessed it, and it shook me. And I'm like, wow, that's something that's really powerful. I also got introduced to an amazing couple at that event. And, I've talked a lot about how Josh has changed my life, but, I met this gentleman from Pennsylvania, and we hit it off the first night at dinner, and, really, really became one of the best friends in the world to me. Through that event, when I flew back to Tampa, I got connected with other guys that were kind of a part of the circle. Also in the fitness space, one of them ran a gym, so I became kind of a regular attendee of this weekly workout. And what was amazing is these workouts were obviously centered around the training, but it was the way that these guys accepted me into their life. Like they knew me from nobody, right? Like if they
Right.
really knew who I was, like would they actually accept me? But I
Mm.
felt real deep masculine love, and it began to really change me. So this was the summer of 2017 through the next year, 12, 14 months. I'm getting exposed to strong Christian men. Like I talked about,
Mhm.
I didn't grow up in the church. We went to church a handful of times when I was a kid, and I can remember feeling out of place. For one,
Right.
we're always late. Parents are always arguing when we go there. Why are we sitting in the back? Why are we leaving? Right after it. It's like
Mm.
so. I once again an identity that I held was that I'm just not a church person. Maybe there's a
Yes.
God. I'll accept that, but I'm not going to identify and talk about it for
Yes.
me. But I think being exposed to individuals like that lead their life through their faith first, but are also succeeding, are doing
Right.
way better than I had done. It's like, okay, there's something that I felt was missing. Uh, and I was in a long-term relationship. This is 2018. One business was kind of struggling to. I was on the verge of closing it down. The other one that I had started, that I joined the mastermind, wasn't really taking off. So it caused a lot of tension in my life between me and my ex. And like, I don't know if I'm actually going to make this. And I can remember September of 2018 being like, Steph, I think the only thing missing is church. Like, I think maybe I need to
Mm.
try this thing out, because why are all these other guys seating? Maybe
Right.
maybe there's a
Maybe God
marketing
is the
tip.
secret.
Yeah, maybe there's a marketing tip inside a church that you only get in the Bible, right?
You only get
Uh,
if you
yeah,
come.
and she was open, she was supportive. She had some kind of Catholic wounds from her upbringing, so she wasn't like, "Let's go, I'm right behind you," but she was in support of it. We didn't really take action on it at that point, so that would have been September. October kind of rolls around, and I mentioned the couple that I met in July of the year prior. Josh had become a very close friend of mine, somebody I spoke with on a weekly basis. He lived up in Pennsylvania. He's like, "Hey Frank, I'm coming down to Florida. I'll be in Orlando, which is about an hour commute from where I lived." He said,
Mhm.
"You should come over for the day. Whatever you got going on, put it aside. I just want to spend some time with you." I said, "Absolutely, man. I haven't seen you in a really long time, other than just through Zoom or a virtual call or whatever
Right.
we had done." So I drove over there, thinking I'm going to spend the day talking about business and marketing funnels and maybe a little bit about life and sports, family, what's going on. I think Josh was coming down with a completely different agenda. So, strong man of faith. I think he hears from God in a way that very few do. He's wrote some amazing books, runs an amazing Christian-based podcast for men. Just an incredible man of God. Like I truly dedicate so much of who I am today to him. But I picked him up at his hotel. You know, for anybody familiar with downtown Orlando, one of the main streets that runs through the city is Church Street. It kind of runs parallel to Amway Arena where the Magic play. And I said, Josh, I'm going to park downtown. I think we'll be able to find a nice restaurant on Church Street. It's kind of like one of the main, you know, restaurants, clubs, bars. I think we'll find a great place that we can have lunch. He said, awesome. So we walk, we find this old hickory uh, steakhouse. He said, there's a spot, man. So we walk in. It's a, you know, Wednesday, Thursday afternoon, you know, 1, 2 o'clock. So the restaurant is really empty. He asked the waitress, can we sit somewhere in the back? And she said, sure. You know, she comes over. He said, bring us some water. We're going to be here for a while, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, I think he was coming down here with an agenda. So, you know, the minute the waitress walks away, he says, Frank, can I ask you a couple questions? I said, bro, you can ask me anything you want, man. You
Yeah.
know, you're one of my best friends. He goes, how's your relationship with your father? And what do you know about God? And I was kind of taken back. I was like, okay, and once again, there's kind of some interesting things to say here. You know, I expressed, you know, I didn't have the greatest relationship with my dad. He provided for us. You know, I saw a lot of what I didn't want to be in
Right.
him, and that's kind of the aim that I took for the rest of my life. But I didn't know much about God. You know, maybe I believed that there was one, but I didn't really have an understanding of what that meant. And he said, well, can I share some things with you? And we kind of sat there for what felt like 20 minutes, but I think it was a couple of hours.
Hmm.
And he shared the entire gospel with me. I mean, he went back even deeper, and you know, he just spoke so much into me. And I think because I had planted that seed a month prior, and you know, I'd seen, you know, I'd witnessed other men that were leading with their faith.
Hmm.
I think I was ready. You know, I really see
Right.
that as a divine appointment that only God could have orchestrated. You know, after lunch settled up, he's like, what do you think, man? He's like, are you ready to accept Christ into your life? And I said, let's do this, man. Like 100%. So he's like, well, we need to pray. We need to go somewhere. I want to pray over you. So we happened to walk out of the restaurant. Right across the street was a history center with a nice fountain outside. So we walked over to the history center. He placed his hands on my shoulder, and you know, I accepted Christ and the Holy Spirit into my life. And you know, Josh said in the moment he felt, you know, something lighter inside of me. Even the way that I looked, he's like, you seem at peace right now. And
Yeah.
I felt and I felt that, you know. He's like, Frank, you need to take me back to my hotel. I have something for you. He had literally flown down from Pennsylvania with a Bible that he was ready to give to me. So, like I said, he was coming here, I think, with
Yeah.
a plan. And, you know, he's talked about it. We've had a lot of conversations over the last couple, you know, 5, 6 years at this point now about this. Like, he said he always knew that's why he came into my life. He just wasn't sure when the opportunity was going to present itself.
Sure.
But he had planted a lot of seeds, you know, over the year prior leading up to that. So that would have been October 22nd of 2018. I mean, I remember it because it really was a day that changed my life. You know, I was deep in a pornography addiction at the time. I was in a very destructive and toxic relationship, most due to my own, you know, behavior. I was, you know, drinking pretty regularly. I was still, you know, lightly partying at the time. It wasn't a massive part of my life, but because I was empty in a lot of other things, I was using
Right.
these escape outlets.
Yes.
You know, by January, you know, I've been trying to kind of find my walk. Like, you know, when you don't grow up in church, it's like, and you're 35, it's like you have certain things in your life that, you know, you're just set in a, you know, certain way. And I was like, okay,
Totally.
well,
Right.
I'm reading this book, but I don't really understand it. I'm trying to find a
Right.
church, but how's that really changing me? Like, I thought like everything was going to instantly change. And
Yes.
Josh was like, no, like this is going to be a process for you. So I said, okay, well, I have to take some of the responsibility and actually make some changes for myself. So, you know, I dedicated myself at this point. I'd gotten, you know, not in the best shape, you know, even being a fitness expert and having
Right.
helped, you know, a lot of people get in incredible shape. I let some of those things go in my life. So in January, you know, 2019, as it kind of turned, you know, into the new year, I said, I'm going to take the month of January and I'm going to go on the most insane physical transformation. So I found an elimination based diet, carnivore diet. I lost 21
Hmm.
pounds. I
Yep.
dropped like 8 pounds of 8% body fat in that first month. Became so clear, light on my feet. Like it really changed my life. I also stopped drinking as
Hmm.
well. Now by this point, I knew that I had a big problem with pornography. Like I
Hmm.
had started looking into research. I understood that it was having massive impact on how my brain function operated, on my heart. So I knew that there was a problem. I'm a guy that likes to look at research. So I was, you know,
Yes.
looking at as much as I could possibly find. Not a lot was available
That's correct.
back
Yeah.
then. There were a couple great talks on YouTube. Gary Wilson, who's the author of Your Brain on Porn, I was a
Uh-huh.
great book. He had a couple long form interviews that had went really viral, a few million views. So I had a level of understanding that there was a problem. Other men were addressing this, and there was a way that I could get out of it. But that
Hmm.
was as far as I went. I hadn't
Right.
talked to anybody about it. I was wrestling inside, like, now if I talk to people, what's going to happen? Like, what's this
Right.
judgment going to be? So I didn't really take any proactive steps until February 14th of 2019. So, I mentioned that I'd become a part of a regular workout group. My buddy owns a gym. Literally for years, like, we worked out almost every single Thursday. We'd work out, we'd go to lunch, we'd chop it up. We would just a big group of guys, really, really
Yeah.
supportive. That day, for whatever reason, I had something going on later, so I wasn't able to make it to lunch. And there was one other guy that was a part of the group that couldn't go either. So we stayed back, and I'm like, Zach, man, I got a couple minutes before I do need to leave. Let's just kind of catch up. I hadn't seen you in a bit. So we're sitting in my car, just kind of having a conversation. And Zach, who is a Marine, strong, alpha man, like somebody that I truly looked up to and had tons of respect, out of nowhere, he brings up the conversation of Wim Hof breathing and how it's helping him control his sexual energy. And
Mm.
he's like, dude, it's helping me with my porn addiction. And I kind of stepped back. I'm like, what did you just say? Because here's a guy that I would have never thought would have struggled with
Right.
something like this, right? It's
Yes.
like he's like, dude, I've had this pornography addiction for almost 10 years. He pointed back to his time when he was in the military, serving our country,
Yes.
how in Iraq, like they would have a tent set up for him, not for
Hmm.
him specifically, but for all the guys. It's like, hey, if you're stressed and you need a
Yes.
release, you go there. He's
Yes.
like, dude, because that was just something that was so common and normal. When I came back and became, a civilian, he's like, I haven't been able to break free from this. He's like, but I
Right.
found some success now. And I was like, holy dude, like, I don't know why you felt the need to share that right now, but it,
Hmm.
it makes me feel like I can share something with you. And this was the first time I talked about it. I
Yeah.
said, "Hey man, here's my struggle, man. Like 20 years, dude. I was, little boy at the time. I wrestled with it my entire life. The internet became around. I got into the
Yes.
wireless industry. Like everything I shared here today. I was like, I don't know why you shared that with me today, but I've been looking for somebody to talk about this with, and it's you. So I want to thank you, and I
Yeah.
want to tell you that I'm so sick and tired of having this in my life that I'm committed to doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But I need a couple things from you, man. Like, and are you willing to do this? And he said, absolutely, man. I love you, bro. Whatever you need. Like, I need some type of accountability. I don't know what that
Right.
means. Uh, but if I call you because I'm struggling, or if I mess up, will you be there? He's like, dude, I've always been there for
Yeah.
you. And then I said, I think I need to go home and tell Stephanie. And
Yeah.
he's like, are you sure? And it was like, I was like, yeah. Like, we had been, 3.5 years living together, despite our relationship being rocky. I thought maybe that there would have been a future. So I went home. I was like, I need to tell her. That drive home, it was about 35, 40 minutes. I'm wrestling with it. At this point, like, there's two voices inside of my head. Like,
Right.
what are you doing, bro? Like, do you really want to do this? Like,
Right.
this stuff's really good, man. You really do like
Hmm.
doing things. It helps you with stress. It feels good whenever. I think I thought that it made me better at sex. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Totally. Yes. Well, I think that's one of the things that we're taught, or is at least perpetuated in our society right now. Not only do we perpetuate the idea that pornography is like sex education, but
Yeah,
we also are like, oh no, it's great. You should learn about it. You'll get some techniques and like
yeah,
as this positive thing to reinforce. I think what I think is that because of all the shame that most people who consume pornography feel is that we have to justify it. And we do this with any behavior that we know isn't really good
yeah,
for us, right? It's like if you eat a bunch of junk food, it's not really good for you, but you're like, YOLO, I deserve it. I've had a really hard week. Or for women, it's like, oh, I have cramps. I'm allowed to eat this today,
yeah,
right? Like we justify any behavior that we have. And especially if you can get a justification that's a societal norm or a benefit, then it's even easier to
yeah,
adopt.
yeah.
It makes
Well,
total.
well, they even make light of it in There's Something About Mary with Ben Stiller, right? He's like all anxious. He's getting ready to go out with Cameron Diaz, and his buddy is like, dude, have you rubbed one out? And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, bro, before any big night, dude, you gotta like rub one out. And he ends up like,
Relax.
releasing on his ear, and then there's a whole
Hmm.
thing where it becomes, like the hair gel in her movie, and it's like, so for me, through my 20s and 30s, like if I thought, hey, I'm gonna get some tonight, I was like, I'm definitely gonna watch porn or on the day, like, and like I said,
Hmm.
I bought into belief that it was making me better at what I
Yes.
was doing, so. That whole drive home, I wrestled with it, and I decided not to tell her that day.
Hmm.
But it ate at me, right? So I woke up the next
Sure.
morning. I had an office that I worked from home. She was getting ready early. By this point, I had a secret laptop. I'd mentioned the previous
Mm.
relationship taught me how to hide things. So at this point, like Stephanie knew that I watched porn, didn't understand the depth of it
Sure.
because I kept everything from her. So I went to my closet, And I grabbed my laptop and I walked into the room where she was getting ready, and I said, "Hey, Steph, if I can have just your attention for a few minutes, I want to share something with you." And she's like, "What is the laptop?" And I was like, "Just hold on, I'm going to share all this with you." And I was like, "I know you know that I watch porn. I don't think you have a major problem with that," because she hadn't really expressed that it was a worry to her, right? Like
Sure.
it didn't bother her. But I'm like, I don't think you understand the depth of the actual issue that I'm struggling with. Like this right here is literally a secret laptop. Every time you leave the home, I watch your car go down the street. The minute you
Yes.
exit the neighborhood, I go downstairs, lock the door, and I pull the laptop out. Like it became a ritual for me
Yeah.
to do these things. I'm like, I talked with Zach the other day, and he's had an addiction for his life as well. I actually think I'm a really severe porn addict, but I don't want it anymore. Like I want better for you. I want better for us. I want better for myself. And I want to demonstrate this to you, like how serious and committed I am to doing this. And I took the laptop and I said, "Watch, I'm fucking breaking this thing." And I ripped it in
Wow.
half. Sounds cool, right? But they're kind of made into pieces. So,
Yes.
I'm a big
Still,
guy,
we'll
but it's,
keep the awesome visual
yeah,
image.
yeah. It's I do see it as a very powerful representation, though,
Yes,
in
I agree.
my
I
life.
think, did you know you were going to do that ahead of time, or did you just decide in the moment?
I just decided in the moment. I knew I was going to throw it away, but it felt like that's what needed to be done. And I'm a big person on symbolization. It's kind of
Yeah,
integrated in a lot of things that we do. I think it was a symbol to me. I think it was a symbol to the world. If you want to say it was a symbol to the enemy as well, that you no longer have
sure.
power over me. I think that was what that was really really demonstrating. We kind of ended in a very kind of emotional part of the conversation. I said, I don't know what the future is going to be. I'm sure this is going to be a struggle and challenge for me. I just ask for your support. You don't have to worry. It is gone. I promise, and I guarantee that to you. I'm never going back. I'm never going to be the man that does these things and hides these things from you because I love you, and I really did.
Hmm.
I go downstairs and happen to be trash day, so I my friend Josh, who was there with me in October, we use a video messaging app called Marco Polo. I shot a
Hmm.
message to him on Marco Polo. I said, "Hey man, I've had a lot of things that I've struggled with in my life, but the one thing that's always had its grip on me has been porn. This may seem like a shock to you right now. I just confessed my life, this entire thing to Stephanie. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. I'm sharing this with you because I think you need to know, man, and I want you to know, and I want you to ask me questions, and I want you to push me, and I want you to make sure that I'm living in integrity. Here's the computer that I just broke. Like it's going in the garbage right now." And I said, "Josh, man, I don't know why this is happening though, but I felt that there was something moving in me at the time.
Yeah.
Like, and I
Well,
was like, I don't know what this is going to lead to, man, but this is the beginning of what I feel is going to be the biggest thing in my life." And I said that on February 15th of 2019, like not knowing anything that was going to come out of it. I
yeah.
felt that something bigger than me, bigger than I'd ever envisioned, bigger than I'd ever thought about was going to come out of this.
Yes.
And what was interesting, Jolene, and here's a piece of advice for the women, or if men are even hearing this, is like every single time I talked about it with somebody, like a layer of shame and guilt was lifted off of me, and
A
I felt
hundred
so much
percent.
more free
Yes.
and light, and this thing no longer had control. And I recognized that. So what I did is I literally started telling everybody, my entire
Yes.
workout group, I told all of them, my other men's group, I told all of them. I got to the point where I told my sister, I got to the point where I invited my brother over, which I don't have a great relationship with him, but I said, "Hey man, some things are happening and I want you to hear this from
Yeah.
me." I started to get a whole lot closer to God. I really leaned into the community at church. And as the days and weeks and months go by, yeah, there were some struggles and challenges in those first couple of weeks, right? Like obviously you're fighting this addiction. There's chemical
Right.
changes that are happening in your body. Like you go through withdrawal symptoms. But because I was open and I was addressing it every single day, it's like none of that stuff from my past had power over me. Like I was moving closer towards what I believe the man had called and was calling me to become.
Yes.
And because every single time I talked about it with somebody, they're like, "Frank, dude, it's okay, man." Like I would get really emotional. Like I'm a big, strong guy, but I have a heart, and and
Yes.
and I wasn't afraid to show it. Every single time though, they would say, "Dude, it's okay, man. Like we've struggled with these things as well. It's every guy's battle, right?" Just like
Right.
Fred Stoker's book shares. And that led me to being like, I think that people need to hear this, and having an amazing community of guys around me push me. They said, "Frank, there's something powerful in the story. There's something powerful inside of you. Like your
Absolutely.
heart to talk about these things and your passion for this uh, is far beyond what most people can articulate.
Yes.
So that led me to having the podcast. And, July of that year, I'd, been 5, 6 months, clean at that point, probably not really the person that should be talking about it. Like I was, still 6, 7 months into it, but I said, you know what, God has changed me. And I felt
Hmm.
the changes happening in my life. I'm like, we need to begin to talk about some of these things. And there were a lot of really cool things that happened, man. A lot of great opportunities came into my life in those first couple months. Steph and I were living in a, really toxic home. We ended up finding have black mold. We ended up finding our, what we back then was our dream home. And, we were able
Hmm.
to move into that as well. So I started a podcast, and it was really, if this story and conversation with other people can help one person every single episode, then I'm winning. Like that was
Right.
all I wanted to do with it. And very fortunate, Apple picked up the podcast pretty early on. They put us on the front page, new and noteworthy, so that got us some pretty good
Hmm.
traction. Now, I was running a fitness company. I was also, the VP for a marketing agency at that point as well. So I was very, very busy, but I had a little public presence, right? Small Instagram following, small YouTube page. So people would, regularly reach out. Frank, thank you for the workout stuff. Like, you're really helping me get in shape. You're changing my life. All this great stuff, which is amazing things to hear. Like, and if
Right.
anybody still wants to send me those messages, like, I'll gladly accept them.
Right.
But what was powerful is through the conversations on the podcast, through my story, through other people's testimonies, people started saying, Frank, thank you for what you're doing. This is 2019, 2020. Like today, this is a more accepted conversation. There's still
Yes.
pushback, and I'm sure you hear that as well.
Yes.
But it's changed a lot. And,
Yes, it has.
I do believe that I've been, at least a leading voice that's maybe led to some of that change. But back then it wasn't. And I
For
think
sure.
guys were looking. So quickly they started saying, Frank, thank you. Women would say,
Yeah.
Frank, thank you for having these conversations. Like somebody of your, background and experience and history and strength, like they just don't address it from the real vulnerable perspective. So we want to
Right.
thank you for what you're doing. Another few months go by and it's like, Frank, can you help me?
Mm.
And at first I was like, I don't think so, right? It's like, what does a addiction coach even do, right? Just listen to
Right.
what we're doing, like break your computer, right, and talk
Right.
about it. Like that's what I thought
Decide to
all that
change.
it was needed. Yeah, and I didn't realize that making a decision to change your life is hard for a lot
Yes.
of people.
Well, I think, well, notice too, is it wasn't just the decision. I think like earlier on in the podcast, you were talking about how it's like, it really is these identity shifts, which is what you have framed your whole
Yeah,
program around, right? As you talked about how that previous identity that you had growing up is like, well, this is just who we are. And, this is just what guys struggle with. This is the struggle that all men have. And this is who we are in my family. And in my family, this is just as good as we get. And I'm just not a church person. And you completely shifted from that identity into, I am never going to be the man again who did this. I
yeah,
am becoming somebody totally different. And that's very different than just saying, I really want to lose 30 pounds and I'm going to eat healthy,
yeah,
right? Like it's very different than just saying, you know what, today is the day I'm going to decide
yeah,
this is no longer happening. This is why your program is so successful and works because you actually become a different person. You change from the inside out. And when you
yeah,
change from the inside out, that's exactly what creates all of the outside change that lasts,
yeah,
right? Which is what, I do on my end for my ladies is we change from the inside out. Like you can pretend you don't have any insecurities and just be like, I'm going to decide that I have no insecurities and that I trust my husband. But unless you actually change that from the inside out and change those belief systems and those thought patterns and you process all of that, pain from the past, it just stays with you. So
yeah,
changing from the inside out your identity, that's how you did it, right? It's not just a simple decision. Not that the decision to do that is simple, right? But it's
yeah,
not just a, hey, I've decided and now it's over. It's a complete identity shift.
yeah. And I had a proven track record of doing that in my life
Mm,
in a few different areas already. I didn't recognize it at the time because I was just
right.
a young, dumb kid that was angry because his parents fed him a lot of fast
Yes.
food and everybody identified as big boned. And, we're
Yes.
just going to be like, I remember wearing Husky jeans that I had to buy in a
Uh-huh.
separate department store because I was
Yes.
an overweight kid. So I shifted my identity in my late 20s to be a healthy individual. I then shifted my identity again to become a bodybuilder. Like that was
Right.
actually something that I embrace. And like I said, I didn't recognize it as real transformative, like because it was fueled just from aggressiveness and testosterone.
Mhm.
But it taught me that
Yes.
there actually can be these things. I
Yes.
shifted my identity from you got to work for the next 50 years and get a retirement to screw that. Like you're gonna
Yes.
become an entrepreneur. Like
Yes.
that's what I'm here to do. So I'd seen these things happen, and I think that's where it's like call it cockiness, call it just, like whatever it was. But I'm like, if this stuff is working over there, it's all rooted in the same fundamental principles, right? Like the
Yes.
laws of changing your life through an identity change are consistent if it's an identity with your weight, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your
Yes.
career, whether it's your addiction. So yeah, that has become literally our underlying philosophy is that in order to overcome this addiction, you must become the man that's no longer addicted to porn. And
Right.
that's where I can say that working in a leadership, sales, transformational position enabled me to do this, right?
Right.
Because you have to help people break their identity. That sales is not a bad thing. Sales is communication, and if you embrace being a good communicator with influence, you can make unlimited amounts of money. You have to shift your identity as a bodybuilder. So if you can do that over there, the same principles can be extracted
Yes.
and focus in on this area. So I really believe what I'm doing here is now it's a byproduct of my life's work. Now, obviously, there's a story and there's a journey. And had I not done it myself, and it was just I'm a talking head that kind of read some books, maybe it wouldn't be the same thing. But I definitely do believe that is what's made what we've done here as successful. And it's truly unique, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of great stuff that's out there that's and we're obviously rooted in biblical truth, right? Everything that we talk about has proof within the Bible that it actually is what God wants us to do. But our approach is not read the Bible and pray,
Right.
like which some programs are some, read the
Yes.
Bible and pray, and when you screw up, call somebody.
Yes.
Great, because you're going to screw up a lot because
Lot.
you're not actually taking any
Which
proactive
actually
steps to
God tells
change.
us that too. God's like, you're gonna screw up a lot.
Yeah,
It's like we already know this. We
yeah,
know that. Yeah.
yeah. So I started the podcast in July of 2019. Like I said, months go by. I start reaching out. At first, I'm like, hey, I don't think I can. But then the power of a strong, network, and
Mhm.
there's another tip, right? Is like surround yourself with just people that see more in you than you see in yourself at certain
Totally.
times. And they said, Frank, like if you don't do this, like you're not doing what God is
Right.
calling you to do because it kept showing up.
Yes.
So it's funny. We're recording this on January 26th, 2024. It was the 28th, January 28th of 2020. That I took the first two clients on. I had my small little Instagram following and I did this little post. I'm looking for 5 guys. No clue what I was going to do with them. I'm like, hey, if they're asking for help, I'll help them if they're willing to pay for it. Two guys reached back out and, couple $1,000, they
Amazing.
quickly invested, wired the money. And I said, all right, guys, like, I don't really have anything for you, but we're going to do this together. So, the next 4 months we worked together, they knew that they were signing up to help me build a program for
Yes.
them, but I was going to be there every step of the way. So back then
Right.
those guys had like, so you text me, call me every single day if
Yes.
you want. We built systems and there's, structure to the things that we do. But that was it. I'm like, every week, what do these guys need? And I'd piece it
Right.
together and okay, how did that work? Give me feedback. Boom. Put the next week together. Boom. How did that
Right.
work? Give me feedback. Boom. Put the next week together. Boom, boom, boom. Ended up getting some certifications, going deeper into, to understanding addiction recovery. I started having higher level guests on. So I'm interviewing now real world experts on these
Right.
things. And I'm pulling from there and I'm beginning to see these consistent patterns. Okay. All this is the same things that I understood from my previous background. So how do we
Yes.
take this and integrate it? We officially made it an official company later that year. I left the marketing agency sort of around June of 2020. I was kind of all in on what, we call rebuilt recovery, and
I
our goal
love
is to help
this.
men become better men by quitting porn and rebuilding life. Because as you know, porn is never the problem in a man's
Right.
life. There's holes, there's gaps, there's things that are
Yeah.
bigger problems in his life, and he's using the porn as an escape outlet. For me, there was a missing part of God in my life. And as
Yeah.
G.K. Chesterton said, man that knocks on a brothel door, a man that, goes to www.whatever.com
Yes.
to look for some videos is ultimately searching. So for me, I had a strong foundation, I think, in my life of understanding the transformative things. I needed that piece of God to kind of
Mm.
bring it all together. Some guys have that, but they're lacking the other principles. Some
Right. A
guys
hundred
have
percent.
other bits of this. So, it's interesting because everybody's like, well, what's the journey going to be like? How long is it going to be? It's like, it's going to be dependent on you, man. It's like,
For
where
sure.
are you at? Do you have
Yes.
20 years of self-development work put in? It may
Right.
happen like that. Have you never looked at improving yourself and you're out of shape and you
Might be
don't
a
have
little
a purpose
longer.
and you're working at McDonald's and this,
Yes.
dude, you might be for a year-long journey, man.
Yeah.
But if you wake up every day and you make success and you make chasing the man that no longer looks at this, like
Yeah.
make that the aim. Who do you need to become that
Yes.
when your life is stressful, the last thing you will ever think about again
Right.
is pornography. I
Right.
stopped smoking in my early 20s. I walk through a cloud of smoke now and it disgusts me. I
Mhm.
watched porn for 20 years, and when somebody says the word pornography and you want to watch it, it would disgust me. It's not even an option to me
Right.
at this point. And I think that's a heart change. That's an identity change. Obviously,
For
there's a
sure.
rewiring of your brain from the neurochemical standpoint.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that was, that
That's
was my,
amazing.
my guy.
I think what's fascinating too is that you and I have very similar timelines as to when we started. I decided to do life coach training. It was my husband and I hadn't talked about our history at all for 10 years. And then when he finally felt like he had conquered it and changed, that's when he wanted to share it. I had a different podcast at the time that had nothing to do with any, it was like a Christian podcast. It was like how to like take all of these tools of mindset and self-development and apply them to faith.
Mm,
And that's what I was just doing as like a hobby. And I was like, I want to talk about this on the podcast. And as soon as Rob was ready, we started talking about it. And that was in 2019. It was in, I think, May or June of 2019. And then my husband was like, people just came out of the woodwork, right? Just kind of like you. They were like, thank you for talking about this. Thank you for
yeah.
talking about this. This helped me so much. We're dealing with this too. And I had no idea that it was so prevalent. And then as we went through, like I decided in August 2019 to certify as a life coach. I was certified in March of 2020. I got my first client in July of 2020. And here we are today, right? And
Yeah.
so it's so fascinating that I feel like there is a movement. At the time when we started, there weren't a lot of voices. And I feel like you for sure have been just such a huge voice. And I feel like I'm a little voice of it too, but I feel like just in general, there's been more openness. And like you said
Mhm.
before, when we can unravel the shame of it, that's when we can find healing.
Yeah.
And I like that you brought up before. It's like your program and my program too. Like I'm Christian. Yes, I come at it and from my program from a Christian perspective and absolutely always happy to include God in the process.
Yeah.
But this is not just a spiritual problem.
No.
And so it requires more than a spiritual answer in order to have a firm solution. Or you would never look at an alcoholic and be like, well, just have you prayed more? Like maybe you should just go to church, twice a week and that'll
Yeah.
just take care of it. Right. And I think for a long time, because we feel like, oh, well, pornography is wrong and it's a sin, then you should just be able to pray and do, religious practices in order for it to go away. But it's not, right? There is that same rewiring of the brain and
Hmm.
the reprogramming of habits and patterns and beliefs that
Yeah.
is an actual science that you need to do in order to become the person that no longer sees this and wants it and desires it. But it's absolutely possible. I love that
Absolutely.
that's your
Yeah.
message.
And if it was, if it was just pray and read the Bible, right? The data tells us that 57% of pastors are struggling with it.
Yes.
64% of youth pastors. And you
Right.
tell me those guys don't talk to God every day and read the
Right.
Bible.
Seriously.
It's like,
Exactly.
okay, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. And I think for me, maybe that's where the 35 years of living, like, called a I don't want to say I'm not rational anymore. It's like I'm completely rational, all the things that
Right.
I do. But having that world experience where you live a life kind of absent of everybody telling you, like, this is just what you need. I
Yeah.
love church and it plays such a big role in my life. But I know too much about the science of behavioral change to say that this is, in fact, probably a more important part for us to actually make that change.
For
Now,
sure.
what has also enabled me to do is because of the way that I talk about it is I've been able to help guys from every faith, right? And
Yes.
and obviously, yes, I have my beliefs on the Bible and Jesus and who he is, but an atheist is not afraid to reach out to me. A
Right.
Muslim is not afraid to reach out to
Right.
me. A Buddhist is not afraid to reach out to me. A Hinduist is not afraid to reach out to me. Like
Right.
I've gladly welcomed all of them. We've had many of these guys collectively on a call with other Christians, and the Christians are praying for them, or we'll be praying
Right.
together. Or I've had so many guys that said, Frank, you know what? Like, because everybody was telling me it was just pray and read the Bible and it wasn't working, I've
Right. Then
lost
you,
my relationship with
yes,
God.
a
And
hundred
what you've
percent.
done is you've actually enabled me to bring that back into my
Yes.
life. And it's like, I've never even said God to you, but it's like,
Right.
because they're on their own journey together and because I'm allowing them to walk in freedom, absent of shame, where the church says, you're an idiot. You're a bad person. You're going to rot in hell. You're going to burn, brimstone and
Mhm.
fire, whatever the message is, because these guys all have grown up in different belief system. It's like
Sure.
the amount of men, and I never thought that this would be a part of my role here. That's it, Frank. Like the biggest thing I got is as I got closer to God in this journey, or I've had guys that have completely been. I don't want anything to hear about that. And by the end of 3-4 months, they're like, Frank, you've raised a lot of questions in me. And it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't raise any, I didn't bring any
Right.
questions to you, bro. It's like, you've removed that layer of shame that has enabled you to
Yes.
understand that there is a God-sized hole in all of our hearts that only God can fill. Now you determine what God means to you, right?
Right.
If you want my opinion and you want my thoughts around this thing, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I don't claim to have all the right answers. I'm on my own journey, right? You know,
Right.
I accepted Christ 5 years ago. Like I'm for the first time I'm doing the Bible in a year. Like I've never actually sat down and read the entire Bible. And you know, me and my girl now, it's like she's like we're doing it together, so it's bringing us a lot closer. And it's like I'm reading this book, and I'm like, holy shit! Like these people are pretty screwed up. Like they were me, but you know, like I said, I'm on my own journey right now, and I'm glad to share my thoughts and opinions if people ask me about it. But I'm not the one that's saying like it's got to be done this way. Now, the behavioral side of things, I have beliefs. Yeah, like you got to do some of these certain things.
Right.
So yeah, and like I said, I think it's kind of all that integration. I say we're the world's only fully integrated, holistic based approach, right? So we
Yes.
look at everything from your mindset to your belief systems to how you eat. We have an entire program that will help reset your gut, from the inside out.
Yes.
There's such a deep connection between the gut health and how your brain operates and these
Yes.
firing of these neurotransmitters. I believe in that we're the only program in this space that actually addresses that part of it. There's fasting. There's pursuing creative endeavors. Like there's
Hmm.
parts that we understand the rewiring. So yeah, I mean it's been a wild journey, but honestly, I feel like we're just getting started, and there's so much coming down the road for us right now that like I literally think we're going to change the understanding of addiction across the board.
I'm so excited. Okay, tell my ladies how they can find you and so that their husbands can work with you.
Yeah. Coach Frank Rich, if you're on the socials, Instagram is the most active platform. Like I mentioned, two top 100 podcasts here in the States. So the Superman Life is our interview-based show, long form, kind of like what we did here. I'll go deep in, it's grown over 5 years now. I interview authors, neuroscientists, doctors. We talk about faith, fitness, finance, family, and freedom. So, that is the ladies can check that out as well. Like that's really
I
for
do love that
everybody.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah. We've had Jolene on a couple times. For the men, the Rebuilt Man. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, anywhere. YouTube channel, Coach Frank Rich. If you want to check out information on Rebuilt Recovery, it's at rebuiltrecovery.com.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Frank, and for what you do. And can't wait to have this conversation again another time.
Yeah, we definitely will. Thank you.
Perfect.